Welcome and thank you for tuning in. My name is Christina Rumpf and I'm a partner engineer at Google Cloud. Today, I'll be walking you through two demos. Demo 1 will be about creating and managing folders within a Google Cloud Platform hierarchy. Demo 2, we will create a virtual network and then create a virtual machine within that network. If you have any questions throughout today's event, please feel free to enter them in the text box below the video. We have Google experts on standby to answer your questions live. With that, let's get started. Today in Demo 1, we're going to learn how to set permissions to manage folders because you don't want the wrong people accessing your project folders. Then we're going to create some folders. We're going to configure access to those folders as we create them. Then we're going to create a project in the folder, move or migrate a project into that folder, and then we're going to show you how you can see all the folders and projects in a hierarchy. This is the Google Cloud Platform console. As you can see, I've created a new organization. I'm very excited about my new organization. I've added the domain, I've set up identity, and I've created a billing account. So you can see I've got crump.com up here, but I don't really have any resources. Before I create any resources, I really want to start building things right. So I want a folder hierarchy to put the correct resources in the correct place. So the first thing I really want to do in my new organization is I click this little down arrow and I go to Manage Resources. And here is a really good place to go and see what your hierarchy looks like. So we've got My First project that's been created that's just sitting there straight under the organization. I don't really want that. I really want to start, organizing things nicely so that we can take advantage of making sure the right people get the right bills and, making sure that we've got the right privileges in the right places. So what I'm first of all going to do is click on this and check the privileges that I have. So I actually have folder admin. Now, this is really important. You need folder admin in order to create folders, and it's not there by default. So really what you need to do to get folder admin is from here, you need to click Add Member and type in your name and select the role. Now, this gives you a great big list of all the different roles that are available through from Cloud DLP, which is a very cool service if you've never looked into, Cloud Healthcare, IoT. Let's go all the way down to Resource Manager. Now let's take a look at some of the roles that are available under the Resource Manager area. So we have folder admin, which is what you need by default if you want to start creating and moving folders. That gives you full access. So you can add privileges, you can create folders, you can move folders, and you can delete folders. If you just want to have somebody just have the ability to create folders, you need to give them folder creator. Folder editor lets you change the stuff that's inside a folder. Folder IAM admin allows you to apply privileges to that folder. Folder mover, again, allows you to move folders around the hierarchy. And folder viewer lets you view what's in the folder and navigate through the folder, which is very important. So if you want to provide somebody privileges a couple of layers down the hierarchy, you probably want to give them folder viewer so that they can browse that hierarchy to get to the folder that they're going to be using. Also within Resource Manager, we've got all of these other roles available. You've got organization level roles and you've got project level roles. And we'll come back to those later. Also, because it is a big list, you can use this handy filter to just type in the role you're looking for and you can filter down and go straight to it. But we're just going to do folder admin. I already have that role, so we'll just click save and it should work anyway. No change. See, no change member already exists on the policy. So after you've got the right privileges, now we can go about setting up our folder hierarchy. The first cab off the rack for me is my sales team. They're very excited. They want to start building out resources. So we're going to create a sales folder. Now, the sales folder will be created in this KRumpf organization, which is the correct place. If you've got multiple domains, you can choose them from here. The other thing that you need to be aware of is this location. Now, right now, I only have one level of my hierarchy. It can only go under crumpf.com. Let's look at this in the next step. So click Create. Now, we'll just refresh this page, and you can see that my sales folder is now created. The next thing we want to do is I want to go down another level in my folder hierarchy because I'm a bit picky. I don't like my production workloads running in the same place as my development and test workloads. So we're going to create another folder. We're going to call that Sales Dev. Now, again, it's in the KRumpf organization, but here, remember we said we'd come back, so we want to browse the hierarchy and make sure we place it in the correct place. And then we'll click Create. And then we'll refresh the screen again, and yes, look at that. We have our Sales Dev folder. Now, I don't like this project being here. Now, so I want to migrate it. It's very important that we clean up after everything, and we want to put this in the right place. Now, there's a few things to be aware of when you're moving projects, because all of the privileges that hit the project are inherited from its parent. So if we move this project, and say you've got a storage account that a service account inside this project needs access to, and you move it to another folder that doesn't have that access set up, then you might actually break your application. So just be aware of what's running in your project before you move everything around, and make sure that the new place you put it mirrors the privileges that it has in its current location, just so that you don't break anything, or at least do a thorough review and make sure there's no dependencies. Also, if I want to move this project, I need to have at least project owner or project editor privileges on that project in order to move it. Plus, of course, I need privileges in the folder I'm moving it to. Again, because I have folder admin, I've got full privileges, so I can move it without too much problems. So we click on the ellipses, we click on Move, and again, we browse through the hierarchy, and we can move it to the correct location. So we've successfully created our file hierarchy. As you can see, when I expand this folder, then my first project has successfully been migrated. However, at the moment, I'm the only person in my organization who's been creating things. I have an organization that I want people to be self-sufficient. And I have Barry in my sales department who should have the privileges in order to be able to create folders and projects inside the sales folder area. So the first thing I need to do, though, is give Barry access to view the hierarchy. And we've done this by assigning him the folder viewer permissions at the organization layer. That means that he'll be able to view the hierarchy down through as privileges are inherited from their parent. The next thing we want to do is give Barry access to create folders within sales. And as you can see here, we've added Barry and given him the folder creator role. So Barry, at this point, will be able to create further folders inside this sales folder. When we click down into Sales Dev, notice Barry still has Folder Creator, and notice this little thing here. This is showing that he has inherited this privilege from the sales folder. So you can see the inheritance as it maps through, which is very cool. The next thing we want to allow Barry to do is be able to create projects. So this is what we need to do. We'll add a member in the Sales Dev folder, and we want to give Barry we'll browse down to our resource area, Resource Manager, and we want to give Barry project creator privileges. Please, if you've got any questions about any of these privileges, this is all fully documented in our documentation site. So we're giving Barry project creator privileges, and so from now on, he'll be able to create projects within the Sales Dev folder. The next step is to create a project. So we click the Create Project button, and we're going to give it a name. We're going to call it My Sales Project 1, and notice the project ID. So if you have naming conventions within your organization, please make sure you adhere to it, because once you've created this project, notice the wording, it cannot be changed later. So you can edit the project ID here if you want to change what it's called from now on. But once you've hit create, you can't change it again. So keep that in mind. Then we have My Billing Account, which is the account that the project will bill to. Remember, an organization can have multiple billing accounts created. Making sure that it's in the correct organization, because again, you can have multiple domains registered within GCP. And then our location. This is really important. If we don't select the right location, the project will be created in the wrong place. So we browse through the hierarchy and we click on Sales Dev, because that's where we want the project to live. And then we click Create. Notice the notifications popping up down the sides so that you can see all the activities that you've taken. And then we will just hit refresh. And as you can see, we have our folder hierarchy and our two projects. In this demo, you should have seen a complete end-to-end process on how to create and manage your folders and projects, and how important it is to create the right permissions at the right level within your folder hierarchy. If you've got any questions, feel free to enter them in the text box below the video. And now we're going to run you through a demo about using VPC networks. We're going to learn how to create a network, modify a network, and how to delete a network when you need to. We're back on the Google Cloud Platform console, and the next thing we're going to do is create a VPC network. First of all, make sure that you're on the correct project. To do that, you can see here, this is the project you're currently in. Choose a project, click the down arrow, and this should come up. If you click on all, you can see the entire hierarchy that you've got access to. We are going to use My Sales Project 1 for the purposes of this demonstration. Okay, next thing we're going to do is go to the VPC item in our Google Cloud Platform console. So you click on the menu item, and notice there's a lot of services. When we hover over VPC network, notice this little pin. Really good idea to click that button, And what that will do is we'll pin the network item to the top of your menu. Really good idea to do this for services that you are using regularly. So we go into VPC networks. Now, if you've never been into this menu item before in a brand new project, it will ask you to enable the Compute Engine API. The Compute Engine API enables VPC networks and all of your compute resources. So you can't create networks or VMs unless you enable the Compute Engine API. Once that's created though, you'll come in and you'll see that there's a default network already created for you. This is obviously, it's called the default network. It goes through and it creates a subnet in every region that we have a GCP region. It's also in a special mode called auto mode. This is really useful for dev test workloads, but in my sales organization, I don't want a network that's globally accessible. I want to keep my data local, and to do that, we can create a new VPC network that only resides in my area, which will be in Australia. So we're going to click the Create VPC Network button, and we're going to call it My Sales Network 1. Notice it all needs to be in lowercase letters, hyphens, and numbers. If we wanted to have something similar to the default network, we can click Automatic, and you notice it created all of my IP address ranges. But what we're going to do is we're going to create a custom network. Custom networks are brilliant for A, just deciding to have a couple of subnets. B, if you've got multiple VPC networks or even on-prem networks that you need all to talk to each other, you can't have IP address overlaps. So if you've got a network topology, really good to create custom networks so that you can integrate it with your existing network topology. So we're going to create a new subnet. You can create multiple subnets here, but we're just going to create one. Again, lowercase letters, numbers, and hyphens only. So we're going to call it Australia SE1. And it's going to be in the Australian Southeast 1 region. We need to decide on the IP address range. This is in CIDR notation. So make sure that you create a range that is just big enough for your needs. Don't make it too big, otherwise it's a waste of IP ranges. Don't make it too small, because then you won't be able to put enough, you won't have enough room to put machines in there. However, we can modify this IP address range if you do make it too small. So first of all, we're going to make it a 10.0.0.025 range. And then we've got these extra options. If you don't know what they are, you've got these handy little question marks. You can hover over them. So in this case, do we want the services within this IP address range accessible by our Google resources? You can turn that on or off. You can also choose to turn on or off the flow logs, which is a really good way of using our system to do traffic monitoring. We're just going to click Done. And also you can choose routing. Again, you can hover over the question mark if you want more details. We're just going to go ahead and click Create. Okay. So while it's creating, we've got this default range still in our network, and we've got this My Sales network, which is creating down the bottom. I don't want this default network here anymore. So we can actually delete it. So if we go into, click on it and go in here, we can delete this default network. And this way I can make sure that people enabling services in my project only use the network, the My Sales network that I created. So once this comes up, we can click Delete VPC Network. Now, if you're deleting networks in your project, Make sure you're deleting A, the right project, and B, that there's no dependencies on this network, because once you've done this, you can't undo it. We're going to go ahead and click delete. Okay, so while that's deleting, you can see that my sales network 1 has been created and we have our subnet. But you know what? Actually, this is too small a range. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in and modify this. So if we click here on our subnet, we can come in here and click edit, and then we can change this to a 24 range. Scroll down to the bottom and click save. Now, if we click on our VPC network, you can see that we've removed the default network and we have our My Sales network available. In this next section, we're going to create some VM instances in the virtual network that we just created. As part of that, we're going to create a virtual machine instance using a boot disk, using a boot disk snapshot, or in a container image. And we're back on the Google Cloud Platform console. The next thing we're going to do is create a VM. So we go back to our navigation menu and we can scroll down to the compute engine. Notice all of the different options for compute. We're going to deploy a VM, so that comes under compute engine. We're also going to pin this to our top. So let's go to VM instances. Because we have no VM instances created, we're going to go ahead and click create, but there's other options here. You could import or use a quick start template. Okay, we're going to keep using instance 1. You can enable labels, which is great because you might want to label it with a team name or a business project so that you could do chargeback. There's a lot of different things you can do. The region we want to choose, as discussed earlier, we want to keep things in Australia. And then we've got this thing called zones. So there are 3 zones in most regions. There's 4, I think, in Iowa. What zones do is provide you some level of resilience. You can choose to deploy in any of those 3 zones, and once you make a choice, it stays there. So the zone is permanent. We're going to keep it in Australia's Southeast 1C. Then you get to choose your machine family. These are the different series. We've got E2, N2, or N1. That's first generation. We're going to stay with E2. We're going to choose what version. So you can have shared cores for the E2s all the way through to 32 vCPU, 32 gig. Or you can create a custom version. I'm happy to stick with the 2 vCPU, 4 gig of memory option. The next thing we're going to look at is this container image. So we can make this a container. Now, if you want to deploy a container, then what you do is you drop in the link to the container image. And again, there's more options. And then we've got some advanced options on how to run those containers. You can specify stuff from the marketplace, or you could drop a link in like this, which is something that's in our Google Cloud repository. But we're not going to run as a container at this point in time. Then you get to choose what boot disk you're using. So if you click change, you'll notice you've got all of these different options. So you can, just choose a public image. These are the pre-built OSs. You can choose from Windows Server all the way through these different types of Linux versions. And then you can also choose the version that you're running. And then you can also choose the boot disk type. This is important if you've got requirements around I/O and the size of that boot disk. You can also create custom images, which you may have created from an SOE. You may have taken a snapshot of an existing VM and you want to, or created a snapshot of a VM and you want to create a VM from that snapshot. Or you may have had a VM that you've deleted the VM part and left the disks and you want to reattach those disks to a new VM. We're just going to go with a public image. If this is a web server, straight out of this console, you can choose to whether you want to allow HTTP or HTTPS traffic through to it. But you can also, going back to the virtual network console, you can go through and configure firewall rules there as well. In this management security section, we won't dwell too much on all of the different options. There are a lot. Please read through our documentation. But the important one to check always is this network option. Here we are building this on the correct subnet in the MySales network. If you forget to do this, you might accidentally have created this machine in the wrong network. So we've got everything that we needed and we're going to go ahead and click create. We're back on the main dashboard for VM instances, and as you can see, it's created our VM. We have an internal IP address, which is what you can connect to from inside the same subnet, or we have an external IP address, which is what you can use to connect to it from the public IPs. So for me at home, I can connect to this VM using that external IP address if I've allowed the firewall to allow me through to this server. You can connect to it straight from here via SSH, and these are all the ways you can connect. If you don't want to enable an external IP, you can disable this and only enable access via the internal IP address. So then you can set up jump boxes inside your VPC. As you can see, we've got our VM instance. We can go through and create more VM instances if necessary. So to do that, we just hover over here and click the Create Instances button. Thank you for watching my demos on creating and managing folders and how to create virtual networks and virtual machines within GCP. Please stay tuned for the next session. If you enjoyed this session and know someone who would benefit from watching, please share it with them. And feel free to continue the conversation. Tag us with #Google Cloud Onboard in social media. Again, thank you for watching.